Hello, so welcome to the third unit of the introduction to microeconomics. I'm your host Elias. In this video, I want to take you through the fundamental questions of economics as well as the economic system. So let me quickly take you through the outline of what we'll cover in this video. So the first thing we'll look at is the fundamental questions, and under here we'll look at deciding what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Then when we are done with this, we'll proceed to the economic systems, where we'll look at the market economy, the planned or the command economy, and finally we will look at the mixed economy. Okay, so let's start by looking at the fundamental questions. So the fundamental questions are raised to try and address the economic problem. By now, I believe we all know what the economic problem is. So the two fundamental facts of scarcity and the unlimited wants constitute the economic problem and therefore provide a foundation for economics. So it should be noted then that these two, that is, the society's wants being virtually unlimited and the scarcity of resources together constitute the economic problem. So it is this problem then that economic agents would want to solve and ensure that there is rationality in the process of solving such a problem. Okay, so as such, every society then needs to consider what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. If we look at the structure, the fundamental questions, remember that we are living in the world where our wants are unlimited, but the resources needed to satisfy those wants are limited. So in other words, what we have is the scarcity of resources due to the fact that we are unable to meet all our wants. And because of this, we need to make choices. We need to decide on what we will take and what we will leave out. We need to decide what we should leave for the market or for the government to handle. We need to decide what we can produce and what we cannot produce. And therefore, in making such choices, we need to make sure that we are rational. Otherwise, if we are irrational, we will make decisions that are not optimal, and therefore will distort the operation of the market as well as individual welfare. Then in so doing, then for us to in making these choices, firms or producers will have to decide on what to produce, how to produce, and then for whom to produce. So in answering these questions, we will be able to solve the economic problem. And we should note that in solving these problems, we have to do a trade-off. For us to produce more of one item, we need to give up resources needed for the production of another item. Therefore, there will be opportunity cost incurred in our choices. Okay, so with the economic problem and the questions of what, how, and for whom to produce, we see that these questions then will form a puzzle which each society should solve to ensure that the economic problem is addressed. And if this economic problem is not addressed, it means then most of the output or most of the outcomes that we'll be seeing will be irrational or non-optimal. So let's begin by looking at what to produce in more detail. So the what to produce problem is the problem of resource allocation. We need to decide how we are going to allocate our resources. So society then must consider asking this question to ensure that what is produced satisfies the wants of the people in that society. We do not need to produce anything anyhow. If you are in, let's say you are in Kafue National Park, deciding to set up a market will have no economic sense, because that is for wild animals. And therefore you need to produce items, goods or services that will be fit for the wild animals. If you decide to produce items for human consumption, you need to do such and make sure that it is targeted for individuals. So we need to produce what society wants. So the problem of what goods are to be produced and in what quantities arises directly from the scarcity of resources. And as such, if society decides to produce more of one good, it must withdraw resources from the production of the other good. In other words, if society wants to produce more of one, there should be a trade-off in terms of resources needed for the production of the alternative good. And this will take us to the opportunity cost, and we'll look at this in the next video. Okay, let's look at the how to produce. Now, the how to produce problem relates to the combination of resources that should be used for the production of goods and the technology that must be used in the production of those goods. Simply put, this problem looks at the combination of resources and technology. We look at what technique will be used in the production of certain commodities. If we decide that what we want to produce is bread, question number one, what to produce? We produce bread. How to produce the bread? We need the labor, we need the capital, we need entrepreneurship, we need the land. So we need all the techniques, we need resources brought into the production process. We need flour, we need sugar, we need yeast, we need baking powder, and so on. So all these mixtures form the resources that are needed in the production of bread. So the how to produce question relates to the techniques that will be used in the production process. So scarcity of resources then requires that goods are produced in the most efficient way. That is, we should produce items with the minimum cost possible. So given the minimum cost, we have to ensure on the other side that quality is not distorted. If we decide to produce goods with cheaper resources, the quality of the output must not be compromised. Then it means we are directly facing the economic problem and we are trying to find the solutions to those problems. Okay, so the choice between different production methods then depends on the available resource supply and the prices of the factors of production. If you have a lot of resources, you will be able to produce more. And if the factors of production are cheap, you will be able to produce more at a given cost. Move to the for whom to produce question. So this problem relates to the distribution of the produced resources in the society. In deciding who will get what items, we need to look at the population in general and the characteristics of the population. If you have produced bread, say brown bread or white bread, you need to look at who likes white bread, who likes brown bread, who will buy it. And when distributing, you distribute according to people's preferences. Therefore, this question must have the people in mind, the actual consumers in mind. When we are making the decision of for whom to produce, we should have the category of consumers in mind. Therefore, society must decide who should get how much from the total output of the produced goods and services. And this problem is concerned with social justice or equity. In other words, when distributing resources, we need to do it with all fairness. Okay. Okay, so let's summarize. So in short, when deciding what, how, and for whom to produce, the what question, we should produce something for which the benefits of producing it are larger than the costs of producing it. So we look at the cost benefit analysis. If the costs are more, it means we should not produce it. But if the benefits are more, it means it's a viable decision to produce such an item. The how question, we should produce goods in the least cost way. So we should be efficient in our production. And finally, for whom to produce, we should produce outputs or commodities for the individuals who value those goods the most. If you produce say maybe items that are not needed by a certain class in the society, and then you distribute to them, you will make a loss, because those people you are targeting are not the people who's with a high preference or taste for your items. So in making such a decision, we should make sure that we are producing these goods for people who value them the most. Let's turn our focus to the economic system. So the economic system is simply a particular set of institutional arrangements and a coordinating mechanism for solving the economizing problem. So with this then, we will see different economic systems, each depending on how decisions are made of what, how, and for whom to produce. So the type of goods and services produced, how they are produced and distributed will depend on the type of economic system adopted by a particular country. Some countries will leave everything to the market, and others would want the government to do everything, to decide what, how, and for whom. And still in other economies, you will find that both the private sector and the government are making the production decisions. Therefore, it consists of a matrix of social institutions, agents, organizations, and society. So all these different groups will come together, and they will be forming economic decisions. So we have three basic types of market systems. The first one is the market economy. Then we have the command and the mixed economy. So think about the market economy. So in the market economy, we have the demand side and the supply side. So it is the forces of demand and supply that help in deciding what, how, and for whom to produce. In other words, the private sector is taking the key role in making the decisions in the economy. We also have the command economy. So think of it in simpler terms. Think of somebody passing a command: do this, do that, do ABCD. So it is a command, meaning there is control of how production decisions or consumption decisions are made in such an economic system. And in the middle of the market and the command economy is the mixed economy. So we can think of it as imagine you mixing maybe sugar and salt to form a solution. And you will find that you will have both the sugar and the salt taste. In other words, you will form the ORS kind of a solution. So what you have here is that we have the private and the public sector making economic decisions, and what they decide is what will hold in the market. So let's look at the market in more details. So the market economy refers to an economic system in which property resources are privately owned and markets and prices are used to direct and coordinate economic systems. The market economy is also known as the capitalist economy, where the private sector has the key role in the running of economic activities. And if government has a role to play, government's role is limited to providing an enabling environment for the private sector to operate. So when we have the market, so how the market operates is like an invisible hand where somebody would go on the market, buy items, prices will be changing without anybody forcing the items to be bought or the prices to go up. So things are moving naturally depending on whether demand is high or supply is high. If supply outweighs the demand, it means there will be some shortages. I mean, there will be some surpluses on the market, and therefore there will be a downward pressure on the prices, and so on. So if we look at this, then in the market economy, the private sector will decide what to produce. This means that they will be determined by consumers' preferences. So the private sector will produce what the consumers prefer. How to produce, and this is determined by the producers who are seeking to make profit. So in their pursuit for profit, they'll produce items which are less costly. And for whom to produce, this is determined by the purchasing power of the consumers. The one with the money will get the items. In the command economy, this is an economic system in which most property resources are owned by the government and economic decisions are made by a central government body. So what happens here, the government will form a group of people who will be making decisions. In Zambia, we have the cabinet where members of different constituencies will sit, where members of the government body will sit to form economic decisions. And different ministers will be assigned, usually by the head of state, to conduct certain activities. So here we see that from the command economy, decisions of what, how, and for whom to produce are made by the government. So the command economy is also known as the communist or socialist economy. Finally, we have the mixed economy, which refers to a system in which the government and the private sector jointly solve the economic problem. And here we see that the decisions of what, how, and for whom to produce, especially for what, consumers and the government jointly or in different portions would make such decisions. For the how to produce, government and the producers will make the decision, and for whom, it's the purchasing power and the government preferences which will make the decisions. Okay, so in summary, so we see that when we have an array of the economic system, we are moving from a purely planned economy, moving to the purely market economy. So some of the countries that would fall in the communist state include the North Korea. As we move to the capitalist side, we'll be seeing that the government control on the economy will be reducing as we move to the right. So from North Korea to United States and Japan, we see that here there is much competition, and the private sector has a lot of activity roles to play in the market. Therefore, to summarize, in the command economy, resources are allocated by the central government planning body, and in the free market economy, there is little or no government regulation of the consumption, production, and exchange of goods. In the mixed economy, market forces play a larger role, but the government intervenes extensively. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you have questions, please send an email to muauelias@gmail.com. I'll see you in Unit 4.